Good morning, dear students of class 12. Welcome to the English online learning class. Today we are going to take up part 4 of the lesson Indigo by Louis Fisher. So let us briefly recap what we did in the previous classes. This lesson, uh, Indigo, is by Louis Fisher and it's an excerpt from his book The Life of Mahatma Gandhi, which is considered as one of the best books ever written on Gandhi. So when Louis Fisher visited Gandhiji's ashram and Sevagram in 1942, during conversation with Gandhiji, Gandhiji shared with him what were the reasons which compelled him to force the British to leave India. And it was in the year 1917. He tells him about the December 1916 annual convention of the Indian National Congress in Lucknow, which was attended by 2,301 delegates and many visitors. During the proceedings of the session, Gandhiji saw that a peasant who was representative of any other peasant in India, poor and weak, came to him and introduced himself as Rajkumar Shukla from Champaran. He asked Gandhiji to come with him to Champaran. And Gandhiji was impressed by his firm determination, by his resoluteness. He would never leave Gandhiji, in spite of the fact that Gandhiji told him that he had an appointment in Kanpur and at the same time he had to visit many parts of India. But he followed Gandhiji everywhere. Finally, Gandhiji decided to give him a date. He said that he would be in Calcutta on such and such date, and from there he would go with him to Champaran. On the fixed date, at the fixed place in Calcutta, Gandhiji found that Rajkumar Shukla was waiting for him, and the two boarded a train to for Champaran, and the first halt was Patna in Bihar. There, Gandhiji was taken by Shukla to the house of a lawyer, Rajendra Prasad, who later on became the president of Congress Party and India. Rajendra Prasad was not in the house, but as the servants knew Shukla, they allowed Gandhiji to stay with him outside the house. But the condition was that Gandhiji was not supposed to draw water from the well. Gandhiji decided to go to Muzaffarpur en route to Champaran instead of proceeding straight to Champaran because he wanted to have complete information about the conditions of the peasants. Then he already sent telegram to Professor J.B. Kriplani of the Arts College in Muzaffarpur, whom he had seen at Tagore Shantiniketan house. The train arrived on 15th April 1917 and Kriplani was there waiting for him with a large body of students. So he has mobilized the public support for his cause. He stayed for 2 days in the house of Professor Malkani, who was a teacher in government school, which Gandhiji found very daring and extraordinary because Gandhiji was an advocate of home rule, and sheltering a man who was an advocate of home rule would even cost him his job, as he was working for the British government. So the news of Gandhiji's arrival spread like wildfire, and people from Champaran and nearby places started coming on foot or by whatever conveyance they could get to see their champion. Gandhiji met the lawyers who briefed him about the type of cases being brought to them by the peasants. He chided the lawyers, scolded them for collecting big fees, and at the same time, he told the people that they should be free from fear. And there was no need to go to the courts and pay exorbitant fees to the lawyers. They should fight their own cases. The land arrangement, which was since many years on the basis of long-term contract in Champaran, was that the large estates were owned by Englishmen and the Indian peasants worked as tenants. The chief commercial crop was indigo, and the landlords forced the Indian peasants to plant 15% of their holdings with indigo and surrender the entire indigo harvest as rent. But then, as per the recent developments, Germany had developed synthetic indigo, and the British landlords tried to gain out of the situation. They forced the Indian peasants to pay compensation, and instead they would relax them from the compulsion of paying 15% of cultivating 15% of their land with indigo and surrendering the entire harvest as rent. Some farmers agreed, but some peasants opposed. But later, when the Indian peasants who had already uh, paid compensation, they came to know about uh, Germany developing synthetic indigo, they felt they were cheated. And now they wanted their money back. So there was a lot of unrest among the peasants who felt that they were being cheated and exploited by the British landlords. At this point, Gandhiji arrived in Champaran. Now, Gandhiji started by collecting facts from different sources. He visited the secretary of the British Landlord Association and then the British official commissioner uh, of the Tirhut division. But in both these places, he was not given any information, rather, he was asked to leave. Gandhiji did not leave. He proceeded to Motihari, where he set one of the house as his headquarters and started the investigations. Gandhiji was not alone, several lawyers also were with him. And at that time, a report came from that a peasant in the nearby village had been maltreated. And so Gandhiji proceeded there, but there he was stopped midway by police superintendent's messenger, who asked him to return back. Gandhiji accepted the order and returned back, but then when he was served an official notice to quit Champaran immediately, Gandhiji received the notice and then wrote back that he would disobey the order. In consequence of this, Gandhiji received a summons that he has to appear in the court next day. Summon, a court order. Now, all night Gandhiji remained awake because he thought that if he would be arrested in the court, he would be sent to jail, he would let this cause not die. And so he was fully prepared. He telegraphed Rajendra Prasad to come from Bihar with influential friends because he might need them, the legal advice, and then he sent instructions to the ashram so that in case if he is sent to jail, the ashram work should not suffer. So he sent the instructions to the ashram. Then he wired a full report to the Viceroy, to the British Viceroy, informing the Viceroy what was taking place in Champaran. Morning found the town of Motihari. From here we have to continue. Morning found the town of Motihari black with peasants. Black with peasants means all the peasants had gathered and in support of Gandhiji. They had merely heard a Mahatma who wanted to help them was in trouble with the authorities. This information had reached them that there's a Mahatma Gandhi who had come to help them and was in trouble. So everyone was with Gandhiji, in support of Gandhiji. They collected outside the court. So the entire town of Motihari was black with peasants. Their spontaneous demonstration, it was not planned. It was all on their own. In thousands around the courthouse was the beginning of their liberation from fear of the British. For the first time, they had come in such huge numbers in support of Gandhiji, and it was a beginning of their liberation, freedom from fear from the British rule. The officials felt powerless. The British officials, they felt powerless, helpless. Without Gandhiji's cooperation, now they sought for Gandhiji's cooperation to help them in controlling the crowd. He helped them to regulate the crowd. He was polite and friendly. He was giving them concrete proof that their might, hitherto dreaded and unquestioned, could be challenged by the Indians. He was trying to impress upon them that no matter how much powerful their, they may be, but they can be challenged by the Indians. The government was baffled. Baffled means confused. The prosecutor requested the judge to postpone the trial. Now just see how confused the government officials were. The prosecutor was requesting the judge to postpone the trial. Apparently, the authorities wished to consult their superiors. They wanted to have a word with their superiors. Gandhiji protested against the delay. He wanted that the court proceedings should go on without any delay. He read a statement pleading guilty. He was involved, he told the court, in a conflict of duties on one hand. He agreed that he was involved in conflict of duties. He had disobeyed. Not to set a bad example as a lawbreaker. On the other hand, to render the humanitarian and national service. He was trying to tell them he was guilty because he had indulged in conflict of duties. But the intention was not as a lawbreaker, but on humanitarian grounds and for national service, for which he had come. He disregarded the order to leave Champaran, not for want of respect for lawful authorities, but in obedience to the higher law of our being the voice of our conscience. He asked for the penalty. He wanted what was the penalty due on him for disobeying the order. The magistrate announced that he would pronounce sentence after a 2-hour recess and asked Gandhiji to furnish bail for those 120 minutes. So, Gandhiji was asked to furnish bail. In the meantime, the magistrate said that there would be a 2-hour recess before they could give their final judgment. Gandhiji refused. The judge released him without bail. Now just see. Gandhiji had to be released without any bail. When the court reconvened, the judge said he would not deliver the judgment for several days. Meanwhile, he allowed Gandhiji to remain at liberty. So, when the court reconvened after the hour's recess, 2-hour recess, the judge said that he would not be giving the judgment. He would be reserving it, and then Gandhiji was allowed to leave, and he would be at liberty, and he was released without bail. Rajendra Prasad, Brij Kishore Babu, Maulana Mazrul Haq, and several other prominent lawyers had arrived from Bihar in support of Gandhiji. They conferred with Gandhiji. They had a word with Gandhiji. What would they do if he was sentenced to prison? They wanted to know what would be their course of action if Gandhiji was sentenced to prison. Gandhiji asked. Why, the senior lawyer replied, they had come to advise and help him. If he went to jail, there would be nobody to advise and they would go home. Because if he was sent to jail, then probably this case, this fight would stop here only because they would leave. What about the injustice should sharecroppers? This was Gandhiji's question. What about the injustice to the sharecroppers? Gandhiji demanded. The lawyer withdrew to consult. Rajendra Prasad had recorded the upshot of their consultations. They thought amongst themselves that Gandhiji was totally stranger, and yet he was prepared to go to prison for the sake of the peasants. If they, on the other hand, being not only residents of the adjoining district, but also those who claim to have served these peasants, should go home, it would be shameful desertion. So this was their realization. We stop here and we'll continue with this in the next class. Thank you.